So for starters, just like I had done on the wings, the rear spar for the center section needs to be angle cut just a little bit at the top to get it to fit within the ribs. And like I said, I'd done this just like I had done for the wing spars, where I had figured out the angle that it needs to be cut at, and I laid out another piece of scrap wood on top of that as a fence, and I cut it with my circular saw angled at that particular angle that it needs to be cut at. So that was the first thing that I had to do, was just go ahead and figure out the angle, get it set up on the saw, get a fence set up to guide the circular saw, and then make the cut. And then this picture here is, of course, of the final result. There are a few things going on in this picture, and I want to take a few minutes to talk about them. Probably the most obvious thing are the angle cuts on the ends of the spars. Now, I've talked to a few people since making these cuts. Actually, I had made the cuts and I had epoxied the ribs in place on these spars, and then I decided in my infinite wisdom to seek advice from other builders after I had already glued these in place. But anyway, the angle cuts will be fine. The metal brackets that get attached to all of this are more than strong enough, but the plans call for the wing spars to butt up against the ends of these spars, and I would recommend that you stick to that. There's actually some forces that are on the wing spars that will press the spars in toward these spars on the center section, and it's a good idea to have that wood-to-wood contact. But at the time I wasn't aware of any of that, and I thought it would be a good idea just to cut these back as you see them here. Some people will cut the spars at a very minor angle, maybe taking an eighth to a quarter of an inch off of the top and cutting the angle back to that to allow for the dihedral of the wing spars. But I thought it made sense to go ahead and just cut it all the way back to the rib, where the rib is going to be epoxied in place. You can obviously see the rib locations by the pencil marks, and you can see that those angle cuts on the ends of the spars go all the way back to that rib. Now, at the time when I'd done this, I thought I didn't see any reason why I could not do it, and I figured with cutting out that wedge of wood that I would save that much more weight. And if you've watched the other videos, or if you've been talking to me in person, you know that I'm a huge advocate of saving weight. So but the short of it is, I would definitely cut the spars per the plans, or if you know how much of a dihedral you want to put on your wings, you can cut the corresponding angle, and that's it. Having said that, as I mentioned earlier, having them cut in this fashion with the metal brackets in place, with the proper hardware, it is strong enough. There's no concerns about strength. But if I had to do it again, I'm not so sure that I would do these cuts. So, and as I had said before, you can see the pencil marks. That just represents the rib locations, which I'll get into here shortly. And then also, I would recommend, if you can, to go ahead and pre-drill these, as you see here, prior to putting the ribs in place. Once you get it assembled with the ribs, it's kind of a pain to come back and drill the holes. So be sure you have a very good idea what your metal brackets are going to look like. And if you want to just go ahead and use the locations that are given on the plans, that's just as well. But make sure you look at the plans really close and make sure that the hole locations that they give you are accurate and that they make sense. These hole locations are from the plans, and I do not recall having any issues. I usually check dimensions and check the mathematics and make sure things work out, and I don't recall having any issues with the hole locations. So just verify everything, and when you're comfortable that you know, the wing brackets that you're going to be making and the center section brackets that you're going to be making that bolt into these locations, make sure that the hole patterns make sense and that you can use them. And then I would go ahead and pre-drill them prior to doing any assembly. Okay? Alright, let's see if I can get on to something else here. These next couple of pictures are nothing more than a very fast, quick, temporary fit of the two end ribs and the center rib onto the spars for the center section. You'll notice that these pictures were taken prior to cutting the ends back on the spars. These the spars, the way that you see them here, are the way that the plans show them, where you just leave the ends cut square without that severe cutback that I decided to do. And you can also see that I haven't drilled any holes yet. I'm just basically making sure that the plywood sides of the ribs, the spaces are big enough for the spars to slip through, and that everything fits, and I can proceed from here without any binding or anything of that nature. This picture here shows the notch that needs to be cut in the vertical piece of spruce that lays up against the spars of the center section. This notch needs to be put in place where the metal wing attach fitting needs to slip past it. The metal fittings get bolted to the spars, and this little notch needs to be cut in order to allow the fitting to fit, as it were. So I just made, since I haven't made any of my metal fittings yet, I just made a simple paper template using the measurements from the prints to make up the template of the fitting itself, and laid it in here to mark the angle that the notch needs to be cut at the top, and then used a little handheld hacksaw type thing to make the actual cut. But what happens is that leaves you with this very thin area toward the bottom of the piece of spruce cap strip. So the remedy to that is just to add another full-size piece of cap strip behind it and epoxy it together, and that reinforces that whole area to strengthen the notch. So none of this is really covered on the plans. It's something that you realize when you proceed through the build, but the simple fix is just to go ahead and cut out the notch and then lay in another reinforcement cap strip in behind it and epoxy it all together. Now I'm not sure if these notches are the same on all four corners, but just verify the fitting that needs to pass through there, and cut the notches to accommodate that fitting in each of the four locations.
Hey everybody, just wanted to say real quick again, thanks for checking out my YouTube videos, and just a couple of real quick tidbits before you leave. If you'd be so kind as to check out my GoFundMe page, the link is down in the description of these videos. For those of you who find it in your heart to donate for this new cause of mine, I've got another project going on, and there's some really cool things I'd like to do with this aircraft, and again, that's all explained in my GoFundMe. But if you find moved enough to go do that and donate, I've got this horizontal stabilizer skin, and donors will get their name put on this skin, and ultimately when this gets filled and the aircraft gets finished, this is going to be hung up on the wall of honor in my hangar, just a little bit of recognition for those donors who helped make the project a reality. Another thing too is, I'm sure you've noticed that even this video that I'm making right now is of the same or worse quality than the video that you just watched, and that's because, believe it or not, this camera is the exact same camera that I filmed the original hint videos with. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm not really sure why, but I know the video quality lacks, but hopefully the information within is worth something. And the other thing that I want to mention real quick is, again, these are little snippets from my hint video DVDs, so a lot of these individual clips just kind of come to an abrupt end. That's just the way it is when I'm trying to rip these DVDs apart and re-edit them into small little segments, and they just kind of end weird at times. But that's it. That's all I wanted to say. And again, thanks, and I hope you'll come back, check out my channel, and see if there are any new videos and updates. All right, I'll talk to you then. See you.